If some frail tubercular lady circus rider were to be driven in circles around and around the arena for months and months without interruption in front of a tireless public, on a swaying horse by a merciless whip-wielding master of ceremonies, spinning on the horse, throwing kisses and swaying at the waist, and if this performance, amid the incessant roar of the orchestra and the ventilators, were to continue into the ever-expanding gray future, accompanied by applause, which died down and then swelled up again, from hands which were really steam hammers. Perhaps then a young visitor to the gallery might rush down the long staircase through all the levels, burst into the ring, and cry, "Stop!" through the fanfares of the constantly adjusting orchestra. But since things are not like that, since a beautiful woman in white and red flies through curtains which proud men in livery open in front of her, since the director, devotedly seeking her eyes, breathes in her direction, behaving like an animal, and, as a precaution, lifts her up on the dapple gray horse, as if she were his granddaughter, the one he loved more than anything else, as she starts a dangerous journey. But he cannot decide to give the signal with his whip, and finally, controlling himself, gives it a crack, runs right beside the horse with his mouth open, follows the rider's leaps with a sharp gaze, hardly capable of comprehending her skill, tries to warn her by calling out in English, furiously castigating the grooms holding hoops, telling them to pay the most scrupulous attention, and begs the orchestra with upraised arms to be quiet before the great jump. Finally lifts the small woman down from the trembling horse, kisses her on both cheeks, considers no public tribute adequate, while she herself, leaning on him, high on the tips of her toes, with dust swirling around her, arms outstretched, and head thrown back, wants to share her luck with the entire circus. Since this is how things are, the visitor to the gallery puts his face on the railing and, sinking into the final march, as if into a difficult dream, weeps without realizing it. I hold the belief that it is essential to read Kafka in a way that resonates with the reader. In school, I would be asked to understand the author's intended meaning and symbolism. However, this is difficult to do for a few reasons. One, if an author is dead, the reader has no way of knowing for sure that the interpretations are exactly what they meant. 2, even if the author was alive and told us their intention behind writing something, others create their own narratives and the surface meaning may evolve over time. I have written poetry and short stories where I was trying to evoke a certain feeling, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what I was trying to say. Not until the other, the reader, interpreted it as their own. A meaning has emerged to the surface. I did not intend that interpretation. It was only made true with the reflection of the other. I theorized that the meaning emerges because of some universal understanding within human nature that somehow connects us all in that reflection. What is the element of human nature that serves as the catalyst to push this story into the world? The being of being. What do we do to draw closer to this universal understanding in human nature? Perhaps we need to look at multiple interpretations to draw us closer to what is shared. I will start with my own interpretation, which is intrinsic and deals with how the feminine and masculine respond to each other. The surreal and abstract way that Kafka tells a story gives us an advantage. The more bizarre a story is, the more interpretations there will be, giving us more evidence. On the surface, we see a sickly woman continuing a performance because the whip-wielding master is merciless, and the crowd is roaring, applauding like steam hammers. Clearly, this is torture for the woman, and anyone who is sensible would rush down and scream, "Stop!" But that is not how her life has unraveled. Not according to her. Men line up to open the curtain for her in adoration. The director is devoted to her, and maybe she wonders what the circus would be without her. She is a daughter with talent so divine the ringmaster can barely comprehend it. He cannot decide to give the signal with his whip, eventually cracks it for her own good and the good of the audience. The performance must go on, for what would the circus be without her? He castigates grooms and hushes the orchestra because this is her moment, the moment where she is recognized for everything she is, and the crowd will roar in excitement at her luck and magnificence. She leans on the director, the one who led her by the hand, guiding her to greatness, and the spectator watches in awe, not realizing he is weeping. Why? Is it because of joy or sadness? The moment a man lusts after a woman for sexual gratification is the moment she is trapped in the circus. She has become a puppet with her master, the desire of the spectator, pulling the strings and guiding her performance, and she will continue to perform as long as the spectator wishes to watch her performance. She is unaware, in the excitement and applause, in her innocence, she believes that she is still someone's daughter, cherished for all that she is. Of course, she would lean on those who have paved the way for her, but unfortunately, even if the director stops for a moment, maybe because he does not wish to send her on the dangerous journey, the crowd demands it, and we say, men are just like that, and he cracks the whip. The performance will go on, the demand is too high. The woman is dying, but by shallow appearances, she is the most sought-after performer in the world. She has worked so hard for this moment. What is causing me so much pain, she may ask, and in her naivety, she brushes off that intuitive feeling. I believe the spectator weeps in joy and sadness. Joy because he has never seen something so beautiful. Sadness because he is now bound by his lustful desires, and he will also be trapped because he does not wish to leave the circus. This is how Up in the Gallery spoke to me, because I have seen it. I have felt it as a woman. Other women feel it, as it creeps below the surface of our relationship to the other sex. I hear the stories of women who believed that men only wanted to be their friends to eventually end up in a relationship with them, and when the performance stops and she learns the truth, she feels betrayed. And we hear it all the time. Men and women cannot be friends, not as long as desire takes a front seat. When the circus is burned, like the spectator who cries in joy and sadness, there is exhilaration and devastation. It is exhilarating to know that you are desired. It does feel powerful, and I do not want to suggest that it is necessarily morally wrong for a woman to use this power to stay away from the naive little girl she was. While there are outliers, I have observed that many women do not use this type of power for malicious intent, but rather as a means of survival. To go back to that naive state, to believe that lust does not override one's ability to seek to see the other as whole, to strive to understand the woman wholly, for everything that she is. It is devastating to a woman when she learns that only lust is the driving force, for in that she unintentionally becomes an object that is forced to perform. And it is also devastating because I do not believe that many men intended to grow up and sit down in the stands. We were all children, innocent and naive to what was in the circus. That is my interpretation. That is what I felt. But there are other interpretations, so many more. I believe that the key here is the pattern. If we find a pattern in the interpretations, then that may lead us to a universal element in human nature that drives these stories that are felt individually and yet are connected to all. I will give you another example to show you what I mean by this. You are a man who works in a corporate job. You are slowly killing yourself working 70 hours a week, never having time for your family. But the product must be made because the demand is so high. You are the best worker in the office and receive many accolades for your performance reports, but intuition is telling you that you are trapped and you must get out. You ask your manager for some time off and he considers it, but when he sees the massive orders coming through, he denies you because you are his best worker. Suppose you continue on like this until you can't perform anymore. You have so many medical problems, and you are now getting a divorce because you are never home. But you had to work. They needed you, but they disposed you like an object when you couldn't perform anymore. The customers cry because they enjoyed your product so much, and they also cry because now they can't have it. Another example, you are a comedic influencer and you have millions of followers, and all the attention feels great for a while until it doesn't, because you're tired and can't think of content anymore. And people are starting to say that you're just recycling old content. You become anxious because that is how you make your money, and your audience determines if you will eat or not. In anxiety, you accidentally yell at the waiter who didn't get your order right because all you wanted was a beer to take off the edge. The outburst is recorded, you descend and are discarded. The audience cries because of what you were to them, and they cry because of what you've become. The woman, the worker, the entertainer. It is entirely different. It is also the same. Find the pattern and find another layer that leads closer to the universal. So what is the pattern here? What is the same among these examples? Hierarchy, but not just that. It is a hierarchy that hides behind adulation, the obsequious flattery, excessive admiration or praise. The hierarchy hides behind the adulation of an object. Why must this hierarchy hide? If the circus burns and the performance ends, then the object is not the object anymore, and it becomes chaos. More women are choosing not to date because they are asking and waiting for men to learn and do better. People are leaving their jobs. Some influencers are choosing to leave millions of followers behind and live their life. However, some of those followers get angry and the influencer receives hate mail from those who cannot cope with the loss. The hierarchy is not hiding anymore, and these people are having normal responses to the circus burning because they are human. These humans say, "I will not be an object to you anymore." We must now ask the question, how will we move forward in this chaos to create better ways of living? And you may be wondering why we put ourselves in hierarchies at all, why people become objects to us. But I believe that is a question to be explored for another day. I will leave you with this. When you read, I encourage you not to think about what the author intended, but rather the emotion that bubbles up inside of you. What words serve as the daggers in the reflection of your own life? Through this method of understanding literature, I hope to guide others to seek to understand the complexity of humans and learn to work through it.